Well, for me, after being in prison and just seeing the the scheme behind religion per se, because you find that there's a lot of people, you know, for example, there's guys who become Muslim in prison just for safety reasons. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like people have their ulterior motives as far as just trying to, you know, reach a higher height. You know, most people, anyways. You know, and then you have people who are just, you know, going through the motions. But so when I got out of prison, a good friend of mine, Yasun, asked me to come to a class. He sent me a text, I remember. It was shortly after I got out, and he said, you should come to this class. And I was like, for sure. Went through, got put on to the science, and ever since then, it's been on. And it's crazy because there are people who I know. While I was in prison, like after I came out, I went to, like, naturally, after I got into this information, some of the people that I know, you know, were never really been locked up, and I've known them for years, and I'm like, hey, listen, this is what's going on. And one of them actually told me, yeah, you know, he knew about it. He actually went to one class out in, I think, Alton Towers in 2007. In 2007, I was still in the pen, serving a life sentence, and, you know, a life sentence, but I was just flabbergasted, and, you know, like you just got into you went to class and never really gravitated to it. I don't know. But I guess when you look at it, school in general, people are in school just to get what they need and get out. You know what I mean? Like just regular institutionalized school. So I guess it's no different here, where it's like, if you're not passionate about it, you're not passionate about it. You know, but as soon as I got into the science, it was a no-brainer for me.
How was I introduced to the science? I was at a club one night, and it was out with me and my cousin, and when the club let out, there was a food truck outside. And we went outside and we conversating with another couple guys that worked at a different club. And the guy that was running the food truck, you know, we started talking about certain things, and he overheard us. So the five of us ended up gathering in front of his food truck. This was maybe about 3 a.m. And we stayed there until about 5:30. And we talked about a whole multitude of different things. You know, Rex 84, King Alfred Plan, just a whole bunch of stuff. AFRICOM and the Federal Reserve. So this guy mentions to me, he said, listen, he said, I got somebody you should meet. He said, my neighbor, his name is Taj Tariq Bey. And initially, you know, I hadn't heard of Taj Tariq Bey or any other. I had heard the title Bey before, just not really, I wasn't really informed on what it was or anything about it. So with him telling me I should meet this guy, I did some research, and I found out, okay, this dude Taj Tariq Bey is here in Philly, and he does classes. So I went down to Black and Nobel, which is a bookstore where they did the classes, and I actually missed that one. I went down maybe a Monday or Tuesday. Class was that Saturday. And the next one was going to be at a different location. So I went to that class. And when I got there, I was fortunate enough to meet Taj Tariq Bey, Abdullah Il-Talik Mosi Bey, and Ras Mariah V. Bey from RV Bey Publications, and her son, Ms. Raim Alafel. And that class was actually my introduction into more science.
How was I introduced to the science? That's a good question. It's kind of hard to pin it down, but at one point, I think I was seeking again. I knew something wasn't right? I knew in terms of nationality and things like that, it wasn't right. And things started to be presented to me. So I think going to Afrofest, there were different booths and different people that were out there. And that's when I got in touch with Cujo and, you know, the temple here in Canaan land. So I started going to class from then. Yeah, so it was just from going to Afrofest and encountering the people there and liking what they had to say and wanting to find out more.
how was I introduced to the science? Some brothers out here by the name of One Love, they brought a brother by the name of Umar Shabazz out here, and he wrote a book called We Are the Washita. And when I saw that lecture, it confirmed to me that I knew that something was up with regard to calling myself black and all these things. From there, we got into watching things by Brother Aleem El Bey. He was probably the second influence that we had. We did a lecture with him here. He drove here from North Carolina, or traveled here from North Carolina, using his Moorish tags and all that. He had his own plates when he came up here. Then we figured that, I figured that it's time to go deeper into this. What's the foundation of this? Found out about Noble Drew Ali through MySpace. Went to Chicago to visit a Moorish Science Temple out there, and the Moors there put us on to everything with regard to what Noble Drew Ali brought and what the Moorish Divine and National Movement and the Moorish Science Temple is about. And ever since that, we're still here doing what it is we do, making sure our people know the truth about their nationality and birthrights.
Taj Tariq Bey's cousin, Jamal, when I was a student, graduate student at Rutgers University, Graduate School of Social Work. This was in 1992 when he gave me something that Taj had written called the Freedom Package. And I was still in school at the time. I didn't have much clarity on it. And so that was my first introduction to it. And I eventually met Taj in October 1993. And that was a Friday. And at that time, he taught roundtable class on Fridays and Sundays. And so I attended that class that night. And from that day on, I've been doing just been very active in this Moorish movement as to help uplift fallen humanity, to bring our people back into the constitutional fold of government.
How was I introduced to the science? So I'll say on two parts. When I was very young, I was given a perspective that is very congruent with Moorish science from a Moorish Science Temple perspective. I was taught that not to focus on my complexion, even though we would think that it's important to remember the struggle of black people and remember your complexion when you're doing things. Instead, I was taught that is something to be aware of, but that what's inside your head is the most important thing. So, I just want to mention that there's an important book to me that kind of introduced me a little bit, like opened me up to the science, and that was The Moors in Spain by Stanley Lane Poole. The message got me, and basically I Googled Noble Drew Ali. I've never heard this name before. So if Nas is mentioning this dude, I'm like, who is this guy? I Googled it, and I'm not sure. I can't say for sure what came up, but I do know that I got a little bit of online information, a little bit more over the next, few weeks or whatever. I was still in school. I think probably by that summer I had a little bit more time on my hands, and I said to myself, well, if there's this temple that this brother has established and he teaches Moors their birthrights and their nationality and so forth, I want to go check it out. So I went online and I looked up to see Moors in Toronto, temple in Toronto, whatever. I Googled it, and eventually I realized that there was a temple and they did classes. So I went to my first class, I believe it was in Scarborough at a library. I think it's a library anyway, it's in Toronto in Scarborough. And then from there, at that time we were using different spaces. So that was my introduction, and from there, I met Cujo, I met Adisa, and the other people, members of the temple later on.
Well, my introductory to the science, I could be a little egotistical to say that it was always meant to be, because if there was some type of late introductory, then I deal with things on a level where things are ordained. Like, yeah, you could change the course of stuff, but things are destined. So I wouldn't have been where I'm at today. I wouldn't be sitting in front of this camera right now if I was introduced to that at some point, like late in my life. So I could say this was always in me. I was introduced to it from my mother and her mother and her mother's mother. But if you want the layman answer, then more or less you could say 2005, 2006, I was given a audio CD of Muta Baruka, as a Jamaican activist, and he has a talk show, a radio show, controversial radio show a lot of people fight against. So he dropped a little lecture DVD. It's called The Real History of Slavery. So throughout the lecture, it mentions the name Moore. So now in 2008, when I was released from captivity, after doing a year and a half or so, it was my time to reconnect with my true identity. So Grand Sheik Cujo Adjoel, which is my cousin through blood, his father and my mother are brother and sister. Our corporate last name is McCletchy, which has an MC, which already has the tie to the Moorish lineage. So then he came and gave me some info, gave me some Taj, a few DVDs, but so happened to be the first one that I watched was a Taj one, Driver's License Fraud, Part 1 and 2. After that, it was over. It was easy for me to like embrace this. I didn't have to like question, try to go back and forth with it for a while to see if this is what I wanted to do. From the minute he said and gave me the DVDs and I watched it, it made total sense to me.
I came through, I've been through many schools of thought. And I was, at that time, Nubian. And we were told that we were Moors. And it was very interesting. We got books, we got tapes, and I just went in and I was told, somebody asked me who I am. I was a Bay at that time. I took it. But we're not Negro, black, or colored. Moor. We are Moors. Then somewhere along the line, in a few years, I got this message that we're not Moors. And where did that come from? You can't take a Moor back from all the studying I did once I was told I was a Moor. We even had the Circle 7. I knew about Noble Drew Ali name. I didn't know about Noble Drew Ali and all that I've learned now. So the separation came, and I was told about the classes here at the York House, and I'm there, and I had more to study. I mean, Roz comes with the books. I listen to the YouTube. There's just so much information that I just tell everybody I'm on this high now because I always loved history. I mean, I was in school getting B's and C's in English, but the history was like, but it wasn't really history from what I'm learning now. I just got their stories. So, yes, that's where I am. I'm a Moorish high flight.
Why do I think this information has yet to be embraced by my peers? I say mainly, you could say as simple as many are called and the few have chosen, right? We used to say are chosen, but the few have chosen. Because a lot of people I know, they know the science, but it's, even when you were getting into certain other faiths, as far as Rastafari, that pretty much rooted in Christianity and founded in Catholicism. Like, it said to do certain things, so certain aspects of your life you have to let go of, which is very hard for certain people to do, because doing what you are comfortable doing, what you're accustomed to doing, is easy because it flows. Now you have to change your whole thinking. You have to change your whole mind state. The way you do everything. It's difficult. Right? The higher self and lower self battle is a constant struggle. But you have to know how to balance the two. But some people they don't want the responsibility of taking responsibility. Right? And stepping up to the plate and saying, you know what? I have a duty to do to uplift fallen humanity. I have a duty to uplift my people and make sure that the next 4 generations don't go through the same thing we're going through. And our melanin is such a absorber of everything. So the stuff that they're sending out to mess with us, some of us, it's getting into our system, calcifying our pineal even more, and we can't wake up out of that sleep, right? That conscious sleep, that constant sleep that has us unconscious. We can't wake up out of it. So there's some, like I said, that's the most simplest way to say it. Many are called, because enough of us are called. Enough of us know this. Enough of us gravitate to it. But there's levels. There's ones that they're just here. It's like, okay, to go back to your life. There's ones that hear, and they might come to class for a second and listen, and then go back to their life. There's ones that hear and think it's going to serve a purpose to them, so they come, get what they think they need, and then they're gone. There's ones that hear, become fully delved into it, love it, and then something about something or someone rubs them wrong, and they take that personal thing and they associate it with the whole movement, and then they leave. And then there's ones like us who, no matter what happens, we're going to be here, and we're going to stay here and make sure that we do our part, or we leave something for the next so they could continue to do their part in line with what Prophet Noble Drew Ali left. Because that's all that matters, right? And once we could tap into the minds of the women, doesn't matter what happens next, because once we're clean intellectually, everything spiritually, emotionally, then everybody else will come out the way they're supposed to come out, and then we won't have to do no work. But until then, yeah, it's going to be a constant battle, and there's going to be way more of us that don't gravitate to this because it's easier. It's so much easier not to.
These things, I think, is the fear aspect, what we call false education appearing real. So because of fear, because of people being bombarded with false info, when they get the truth, it really doesn't resonate with them in their mind, because they're so like they've been trained so much to not deal with the truth. They've been trained so much to accept the lies, to accept the things that are illusions, and not deal with reality, that when we present this to them, it's not anything that really clicks. Now, on the other hand, if they get a ticket, if they want to vaccinate their children and they don't want it done, trust me, they know who the Moors are, and they're going to call the Moors to get whatever it is that they want. You know what I mean? Somebody sends them a tax letter, they know to call the Moors. But when it comes to, I guess, looking at this more than your personal whatever is where people have the issue, because they only see this as being able to get out of something.
My peers are people in my age group. And the truth is that this information is the most crucial, perhaps not to them, but to their children and their grandchildren. of course, it would be good if they embrace it for the benefit of their grandchildren and their children, as an added benefit. But I think the key is that those generations get this information and are able to make decisions for themselves, and are able to analyze it for themselves objectively. The information has been put aside. It's been distracted and by other things. Also, the power of the information. The power of the information lies in different organizations and groups and endeavors that go by other names. So it's like anything that has things, has assets, has power, has economy behind it. If that energy is taken by someone else or by some other entity and given another name, but still really belongs to where it came from, over time people will come to think of that thing as only having what it only has. In reality, Moorish sciences from the 20th century, from Noble Drew Ali, spread and gave birth to the Nation of Islam, to the 5% nation of gods and earths. People say when you talk about going to college or university and taking your initial course in a particular line of courses, a particular field of study, your first course is your 101. That's Drew Ali. When people talk about the United Nations and the declarations and so on and so forth, the Pan American Conference precedes the United Nations, and Drew Ali came there with a message, even before Selassie, peace be upon him and all honor. But when Noble Drew Ali established this movement and initiated the revival of our culture and our heritage as it is. He established it for particular generations. He was looking at particular generations, and those generations are only just being born. So in a way, I feel like if those of us, in 2017 AD right now who are involved, it's not that we're involved in something that is necessarily weak. We're involved in something that is actually very strong and going to grow very, very, very strong. But we're early. And it's just a matter of timing. It's not a matter of power or acceptance. It will be accepted. There is no doubt. To me, it's a timing thing. We're early, and so yes, our peers may not accept it, they may never accept it, but if they live a long life, they will see it. They will see it grow.
Well, fear is a big part, and also, miseducation and confusion is part of it. But fear is the biggest part, because people have, to really declare your nationality is to say, you know what, I want to take control. And a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, even if you have a job and whatnot, you rely on the system. And that thought of just even your job alone, or traveling without a quote-unquote license, like, these things are kind of daunting for some people. So I understand that, I understand. But with that being said, there's no excuse, because evil prevails, even when good people are quiet and running around mislabeling yourself as quote-unquote Negro, black, colored. It's misrepresentation, And this is why we, quote unquote, black people suffer the way they do, especially in North America, even around the world. Look at it. Even when you have, quote unquote, government that's dark skinned or black, look at these other places. It's no better than here. That's run by the European, pale skinned European. So it is what it is. It's fear. Bottom line is fear.
I don't think it's not exactly that. But my honest feeling is that that's not exactly a true question for what it represents. I think a lot of people are not as courageous as they would like to admit to be, and a lot of people are compromised. A lot of people are more interested in imagery or people that they're connected with and don't want to admit what they know in their heart to be true. So the embracing has more to do with compromise, denial, and a few lacking information. But I think that would be a safe and a fair assessment. Because it actually doesn't take long for people to recognize the truth in it, particularly when you're dealing with facts. As an example, as many of you know, when I was in the Nation of Islam, we came through the ranks quite quickly. And so most of my friends, just like we're sitting right here, sharing with each other, is no different than me sitting home with Muhammad Ali and other celebrities in my household and my babies. So I have a different view than a lot of other people have who may look at the Nation of Islam. You understand, from whatever view they may have. And I recognize more realistic and more pragmatic views when you're in the circles of what you call Privy Council persons. So, meaning like the views that I recognize that believers have or they're developed under is not necessarily the views that ministers and people in the circles have. It's almost like, in some ways, like changing masks or faces. Like when we're here, we're real. It's what it is, and sort of like going on stage, and then this image or belief that I didn't exactly see, like say in private conversations, pretty much everybody knew that the Temple of Allah, which is later the Temple of Islam, is an offshoot of the Moorish Temple of America. But I also noticed that in public, no one want to talk about it that way. They don't want to acknowledge the connections, stuff like that. And there's other experiences that kind of made me discouraging, whereas I stepped off. And I suppose in many instances it's along the same lines as Clarence, Malcolm, John, Wallace, and others who learn different truths, and it's according to where your heart is and where your truth is, how your sense of self-integrity, how long you can stand in the face of certain hypocrisies.